I'm jealous. I'm overzealous. When I'm down, I get real down. When I'm high, I don't come down. I get angry, baby, believe me. I can love you just like that, and I can leave you just as fast. But you don't judge me, 'cause if you did, baby, I'd judge you too. No, you don't judge me, 'cause if you did, baby, I'd judge you too. 'Cause I got it, you got it too. So give my cause I got issues, you got it too. So give my mind a minute and look at my you. That's in glory, all the problems. 'Cause we got the kind of love it takes to solve them. Yeah, you do shit on purpose. You get mad and you break things. Feel bad trying to fix things. But you're perfect. Fully wired circuit. Got hands like an ocean. Yo, what's up, everybody? How we doing today? What's going on? We got a whole bunch of fun stuff to talk about today. RWAs are the hot topic, as they have been for the past maybe 8 months, a year. And I am stoked to get into it. We got some awesome companies. We got some awesome experts in the space. And we're going to get into it here in a second. So we'll wait for a few more people to come in. We're waiting for one more speaker, I believe. And once we get him, we'll get this started. You out, put you back in. You don't judge me. 'Cause if you did, baby, I'd judge you too. No, you don't judge me. 'Cause you see it from the same point of view. 'Cause I got it. You got it. So give it all right, cool. Let's do this. I can't wait to get into this, and I know you guys can't too. So let's get this started. Pleasure to have everybody today. We're going to talk about RWA. We got the RWA Vault number 4. We're doing RWAs maybe every week, every other week, and this week is about the really the greatest transformation of wealth in human history. Right, it's a very interesting time to live, and I'm excited to be a part of this. And so let's go around the room and let's get to know our speakers a little bit and what they're doing. So let's start out with Stanton from Horizon. Stanton, if you could give us a little bit of information about yourself and Horizon, that'd be great.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Good to be back. So my name is Stanton. I am I have a computer science background, and I'm currently in 2 different kind of roles in my life. One is in sustainability, the other is in crypto. And today we're mainly talking about crypto, but the sustainability side actually does touch upon RWA a bit. So I might go into that when we're talking about RWA. In general, our project is Horizon Protocol. We are a DeFi perpetual futures and spot exchange, and our focus is on bringing real world assets onto chain for trading. So we don't bring on the primary asset, as in we don't bring the actual asset on chain. We build a derivative of it, and if you're trading on our platform, what you're able to get is all the price action, but you don't have to deal with any of the laws around holding the actual asset on chain. So the whole point of the project initially was to make it so that real world assets are much more accessible globally. For example, unless you're an American citizen, a lot of the stocks and equities in the US you can only buy as a US citizen, or if you have access to some intermediary who would buy for you. What we're trying to do is make that all flexible and free for anyone around the world to get access to, and make it so that you don't have to trade in and out of fiat as well. So less taxable events.
Oh, amazing! I love it how you can kind of customize your experience with assets and that sort of thing. Very very cool. Thank you, Stan. And Mike, what's up, Mike? How you doing?
Hey man, what's up? Doing good. Great to be here.
Yes, pleasure to have you again.
No, yeah, really good. Looking forward to the conversation today. RWAs is my personal favorite narrative in the whole Web3 space. I kind of liked them before they kind of became cool and hip. So I think they're a great bridge from the real world into obviously Web3, onboarding more users. I'm head of growth at CryptoC. So we're a Web3 marketing studios. We work with all the way from very startup projects all the way to top 100 market cap coins. We're doing some really cool stuff with the Ton ecosystem. We're actually working quite a lot in the RWA space ourselves. We're partners with Bricken. We also work quite closely with Polytrade and Mantra Chain. So yeah, we're quite well versed in the RWA space. We focus on helping projects really to grow their communities and kind of create an incubation kind of environment for them so that they have everything they need to be successful, from growing community, creating liquidity, VC intros, etc. You name it, we pretty much focus on that. So yeah, like I said, RWAs, I'm very, I have a secret, it's not so secret, I pretty much tell everybody, I have very much a soft spot for them in my heart when it comes to the narrative, and I think the potential they have for Web3. So yeah, really looking forward to the conversation today, and great to be back.
Nice, Mike. Pleasure to have you. And better be careful with those words. Those words, secret. It gets everybody up on their toes. Like, what you doing?
Nothing's a
Secret?
secret. Nothing's a secret, is it?
Nice, man. Nice. Well, pleasure to have you again, man. Can't wait to get into more. And we have Sandra from Sam. Sandra, how are we doing today? Pleasure to have you.
Good morning. My name is Sam. Sandra also. I am on board 60. Basically, I'm the old person here. I'm 63 years old, and I just happen to dive down rabbit holes and learn about this kind of stuff. And now I'm a consultant for your mom and your grandma. I help them understand what real world assets are when it comes to fractionalization, when it comes to what they can do and how they can leave money for you. My whole thing is connecting senior citizens with Web3 and these kind of technologies to help them have a better quality of life. And part of today is talking about how so many people are senior citizens, so many people are moving into that part of life. And when it comes to the shift in wealth, how things are changing different towards digital, towards even synthesizing assets, and how people are able to open their eyes and accept it. So that's what I'm here about, learning about what you guys do so I can help consult your family so they can be here for you.
Oh, amazing! Love what Sandra's doing over at Sam. You know, there's a massive population that aren't so savvy whenever it comes to crypto. Whenever it comes to maybe in the even at an older age, even computers. So what Sandra's doing is she's onboarding that building that billion users in that demographic. So Sandra, thanks so much for joining us today. Can't wait to get more into that. And Victor, what's up, Victor? How are we doing today, man?
Hey, nice to meet you, everyone. Pleasure being here. Yeah, maybe a quick background from my side. I'm in the crypto industry since about 2014 here in Switzerland. The RWA had a lot of different names in the beginning. We knew it here in Switzerland as security tokens, tokenization, and all different type of names were given. So it's an ongoing topic now. We know it under real world assets. Yeah, in my previous startup, we focused on bank and financial infrastructure to enable them to save, keep, and trade. Worked internationally with major institutions. This time with builders, we're building a CRM that should enable everyone to manage client relationships and streamline sales and organization-wise, just be better prepared for Web3 and in general new technology. Yeah, so that's our background. We're based here in Switzerland. Happy to contribute from my experience on real-world assets. We had also hands-on experience working with asset managers, real estate and property developers in Middle East, kind of conceptualizing this type of topic, how to take real estate on the blockchain, how to take fractional fund units on chain. And there's a lot of lessons learned from there. Yeah, so happy to contribute.
Amazing. Well, I'm certainly excited to get into more about this specific topic with our experts here. They have a vast world of knowledge whenever it comes to Web3, whenever it comes to RWAs, and I can't wait. So, what we're doing here at Web3M, we launched the Collab Hub about 10 months ago. I can't believe it's already been 10 months. We launched it about 10 months ago, and it gives any company a free way to collaborate with other companies. It's an easy way to do that. And one of the initiatives is joining Twitter Spaces. So that's exactly how we got here. Is you sign up for the Collab Hub, you choose a space. I reach out to you to vet you, of course, before you're joining, and we have a great time on the space together. Talking about different niches in the Web3 space. So if you have a company, if you're a professional, don't hesitate to join the Collab Hub and sign up to some spaces. Would love to talk to you. So without further ado, let's talk about the stuff that I'm excited about, RWAs. So what's fueling the excitement around tokenizing real-world assets, and what's driving your passion to build it, guys and girls? Mike, yes, please.
So, yeah, I think that's a great question. And I'll talk a little bit about it from, I think, the marketing side, because, we've got people that will talk on it from all different angles on this panel, which is awesome. And I think when you look at it from a project growth, I think what RWA is really interesting is you see people tokenizing real estate, tokenizing watches, tokenizing cars, tokenizing, you name it, people are trying to tokenize it at the moment. And I think what's quite interesting about that as a narrative is that people outside of Web3, if we say, for example, in real estate, if you were to say, look, you can buy a piece of this real estate for $50 and it's on chain, et cetera, people can afford that small investment, where before, I think it was, I don't remember who said it, but one of the speakers was talking about buying shares in the US, where if you're not in the US, it's quite hard to do that. Whereas now you look at people tokenizing even, small percentages of funds. I think what it does is it becomes it's a really interesting narrative for onboarding more people into Web3 for many reasons. I think one, the investment level is less, right? If I want to own a piece of real estate, there are some projects out there that I can own it with, $50. Whereas outside of Web3, outside of crypto, that's actually quite difficult. I think two, whether I'm based in the country or not, I have access to those investment vehicles, right? And for a lot of territories, that's a really exciting and life-changing opportunity. I'm originally from Brazil, for example, so South America. And in South America, they don't have access to a lot of the investment options that maybe we have in the Western world. And so by doing an RWA project, we all of a sudden give access to that entire geography. Same thing with Africa, same thing with Southeast Asia. So I think that's the second really interesting concept. And I think the third thing is, for so many people, crypto, Web3, it's interesting. When I talk to my friends outside of crypto, they still think it's a bit of a scam, right? They still think there's a bit dodgy. They still think they're going to get rug pulled somewhere, right? I think what's interesting about RWAs is that they have more of a sense of being a grown-up project, if you guys know what I mean. Whereas, like some of these projects, they are, they have KYC process, they are regulated in their own financial institutional country. These are legit companies, right? So when they're coming into Web3, they kind of have that level of trust. And I think for people outside of Web3, like the Web2ers, I think that ticks a big, trust feather in the cap. And I think those three reasons make it quite, they make the RWA quite attractive. I think there's definitely still a lot of room to improve. But I think from those three basic concepts that I just mentioned, yeah, the wave is, I think we're at the very beginning with our, maybe not the very beginning because there's been people doing it for so many years, But I think we're at the very beginning in terms of it really getting exciting and catching the narrative. And yeah, those are my thoughts on it.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And along with all those awesome points, the infrastructure that we have to be able to continue and build upon, the idea of RWAs and Victor, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on the excellent points Mike raised. I mean, the fractionalization, right? Access to lower type of investment barriers, access to things that have not been possible to be accessed first. That's key value proposition. Another thing is also the just instant and 24/7 aspect of the markets, right? As soon as they become tokenized, we know that with traditional crypto markets, you can take Bitcoin as an example, it's 24/7, right? There's no bank, no counterparty that is not open, right? It's peer-to-peer, right? Assets become tradable peer-to-peer. I can send you my token of, I don't know, my car, and you send me your token of your boat, right? And that's it, right? And of course, you have to solve all the legalities and proof of ownership, but let's assume that's all done. It becomes, like a barter system almost, right? Peer-to-peer exchange of assets. You don't need to go to brokerage accounts. You don't need to set up some kind of things, right? You just pop up your wallet, you hook up to a DEX, and then you have market makers around those assets there, or you just peer-to-peer do this stuff, right? And then you can pledge. In financial services, this is called also securitization, right? It's been around for a long time. And what happened there is, for example, you could securitize, I don't know, like a fund, right? And issue security, and people can buy it. And then the more digitization happened in the financial service area, you could securitize, basically create a security on top of your factory equipment, right? Maybe you have some kind of special machine there. You go to a little tiny boutique shop, and they issue actually just for that maybe a bond or something that you can use to leverage as leverage, and you raise capital, right? So it's like a collateral. And here in Switzerland, the securitization process is very advanced. You can securitize very, very much like, even like a printing machine in your factory or something, right? And but that's again missing the global liquidity, right? You just have it very kind of for bespoke investors type of access. So here that would help a lot, right? That would help. It would be super cool, right? You could allow people to issue tokens for their company equipment, raise capital on top of that, or anything else basically, right? The other aspect as well, what I see for certain assets is the traceability, right? Is the public domain knowledge of the assets movement, right? A lot that comes to mind when you mention that to people is the kind of luxury industry. You trace the Rolex, right? But it can be anything, right? It can be a car, it can be anything that where you want to have some kind of history of ownership. Where has it been? You basically can see all that without having to trust anyone. Yeah. So real world asset totally makes sense, right? It's a really cool thing, but there's a couple of hurdles, that need to be overcome.
Sure. Yeah. Awesome. Definitely new knowledge unlocked right there, from what you just said. I Anybody can take their asset, anybody can tokenize their asset on chain and offer it, to whoever, worldwide. So like just for example, like a light bulb that came up was like, oh, I could, if I'm not using my car, I could tokenize my car and I could market it online for people to rent, that aren't from this country, and it's way easier than having to, present, your license, your insurance, do all these different things, go through all these hurdles to participate in the localized market, and then just be able to, pay for it, with your token that's, authenticated, and it's all monetized through your own efforts, and just way easier for them to move around and to be able to use resources, quickly and easily, and probably cheaper, way cheaper. Anybody else? Stanton or Sandra?
I'll add one point. I really like what Mike was saying, because I think RWA is basically putting on our big boy pants, and evolving what crypto is supposed to be. Because before connecting with real world assets, and I'm considering USDT, or sorry, any kind of like real fiat, converting it and tokenizing onto chain. That is part of RWA. So all of this basically means that the technology that we've developed in blockchain and crypto is actually being used in the real world in some way. And that has to be the future. We can't be just building in our own sandbox the whole time. So I think if we're seeing a lot more hype around RWA, it's because people are starting to realize that there is a lot of technology in here that is useful for the real world.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. It's that's incredibly important. And I think what users are really, the space, there's so many users that want to take advantage of the new, up and coming trend. They want to be on the forefront of whatever's happening, because they want to be there before everyone else gets here. And you're here, everybody. You're literally here. So now that you're here, now how do you actually participate, and how do you get involved with the space? So my next question, I might be like jumping around on our questions or whatever, but I think this kind of fits into what we were just talking about, because there's so many people out there that really want to be a part of the RWA space, but maybe they're just not sure how to do that. So what would be like the first steps for somebody to take to get involved in the RWA space, either building or being a consumer in the space? Would you guys be able to outline those two? Mike?
Yeah, happy to maybe go first on this one. I think when you look at the RWA space, there's two sides to the question, right? There's the concept of how do you get involved, perhaps from an investor or a retail perspective, and how do you start one, right? So maybe let's address the first one. I think from the concept of, how do you find out about these RWAs? I think looking, for example, at, coming to spaces like this is a really good opportunity, to kind of see what spaces are happening. I think following on X, I think one really interesting way is, and I'm just going to shill them, Bricken. They're a fantastic company, and really what they focus on doing, they're one of our clients at CryptoC, and what they focus on doing is they focus on tokenizing other projects, right? And one way that I've kind of started finding out about these RWA projects is by kind of almost tracking companies like Bricken. There's Bricken, there's Stobox, companies that help other businesses to go through that tokenization process, because then you're finding out about these RWAs, at birth kind of thing, right? It's been a real hack of mine to just, and whatever you're willing to invest, obviously don't invest more than you're willing to lose. But I think, it's a really nice concept because you invest at really early stages. And if you have some, like, for example, I come from a finance background before I got into Web3. So I look at what people are tokenizing. Like there was one project recently that I got involved with right at birth. Again, they came through the Bricken ecosystem, and I kind of saw the opportunity. It's a project that's tokenizing a fund in hydrogen. So really random, but I kind of understand the financial background. So for me, it made sense. So I think that's a really nice way. I think following on X is a nice way. I think by the time something enters like a, let's say top 200, top 300 market cap, everybody kind of knows about them already. I mean, it's still fine to invest in them, right? But once they're at that level, that's a pretty big project. So I think if you're looking for the gems, which we're all looking for at times, I think following other companies that help projects go through that tokenization process and, become RWAs, I think it's really smart. Bricken's a good place to start, and then looking at other competitors like that makes sense. And then I think on the flip side, just to answer your question on that, which was how do you tokenize a project, right? I think one of the things I love about RWAs is, sometimes, you look at other narratives in the Web3 space, and people have these valuations that are just insane. You're looking at someone's tokenomics, and they're saying, well, we value ourselves at 100 million, and we have no users, we have no community, we have nothing, right? And what I like about the RWA space is that actually, if you've got a business that's already, being functional, it could be, for example, real estate, it could be a fund, it could be whatever it is, there is probably an element of that could be tokenized. And I think the best place to look at is perhaps go look at if anyone in the marketplace is doing that. Real estate is obviously one of the booming industries that is going through that tokenization process. And I think that's really exciting. So I think looking at what other people are doing gives you an idea if you can do it. If you don't find anyone in your industry doing it, then I think perhaps talking to, again, someone like Bricken or someone like Stobox, a company that helps companies go through that process of tokenizing, because there's a lot to understand about it, like what kind of tokens do you want, what kind of tokenomics are you going to have, how are you going to grow your community, right? I think one of the big things to understand if you're going to take a project and tokenize it and make it a real world asset, that's all well and good, but it's not just, you don't just build it and everybody comes to you, right? Even if you've got the best idea, the most amazing, revolutionary, world-changing solution, if you don't market it well, if you don't build a community, your project's going to be dead very, very quickly. So I think it's important to understand, okay, you're building a business, you're just building a business in Web3, and your currency, instead of it being US dollar, it's going to become, well, whatever your token is, right? So I think going through that process of just seeing what your competition's doing, seeing what their tokenomics are, seeing what they're doing well, what they're not doing well, and then looking for advice from companies, like I said, like Bricken, like Stobox, companies that help businesses do that tokenization process would be a really smart place to get started.
Awesome. Does anybody else have anything to add to that? Stanton, Victor, Sandra, please. That was
I
awesome.
definitely,
Yes, Sandra, go ahead.
okay, I definitely think when it comes to uh, using tokens, you have to be aware of what you're doing first. And I think joining, not just um, following these guys, it's like I joined DAOs, I joined hackathons, I joined things that I got my hands dirty to where I could understand exactly how things are being done. So I could have, I call it experiential learning before I even threw a lot of stuff out there. I mean, I became the client first, and that really helped me understand more. And I want to be able to say when it comes to RWAs, people accept them a lot more when it comes to using a token with them because you are attached something that is real. People can perceive it as real. So a token is easier to accept with a RWA, I think, than a lot of other categories also.
Nice, very nice. Did I hear somebody else pop up here? No, Stanton or Victor, did you guys have something? Stanton, please.
I'll throw in something from a different perspective. So we were talking a lot about individuals, and I think there are also. I spoke to a guy working at Chainlink whose sole job is to help companies figure out whether or not they should tokenize. And I think that Victor listed a bunch of reasons and technologies as to why crypto and the blockchain technologies can help companies with this. But I think right now, from what I've seen and what I've kind of heard from other people working in this, there is a chicken and egg problem in the sense that we are playing with the technologies, we're seeing what's possible, but the buyers, like the institutional systems that are in place to actually play the investor role, they're not coming in to the space. And it's because there's a lot of issues with the space in like at the time being. But we are starting to see things like ETFs. ETFs is a way for institution to come towards crypto. They're building systems that work for them traditionally to invest in crypto. So I think there is going to be a longer process where we're playing with the technologies, learning what's possible, and then there's going to be a kind of it's a two-way street where we have to help invite and entice institutional investment systems that are already in place and get them onto crypto in some way that they're more familiar with um, for this to really work in the long run.
Yeah, maybe quickly to add to it, if I may.
Oh, yes, please, Victor, go ahead.
Yes, Stanton, you totally hit the right point, right? I mean, real-world asset tokenization is a topic since 2018, maybe even earlier. And the common obstacle is always the regulatory landscape, right? Because as soon as you touch real-world assets, it is in many, many cases linked to ownership. And facilitating trading for those assets, transfer of ownership, those things then always hit the legacy legal frameworks or legacy infrastructure. If you want to transfer real estate tokens, you have some kind of land registry. If you want to transfer car ownership, you have some kind of car register. All these registers of ownership, not just for financial products. In financial products, you have some central depository and clearing centers. All these things, they make it very, very difficult to actually tokenize in a real fashion to unlock all these benefits, right? And realistically speaking, it has not been solved yet in a broad sense to unlock the full-scale economies of scale type of potential, right? And fractionalization. There are many pilot projects where some kind of corporate bond gets tokenized. Not sure if that counts as a real-world asset, but yeah, there's usually right now, if you want to get involved in this space, watch out for the viability of the legality of these things. Can they be really traded? Can they be really transferred? How will that work out? There's no exchange to facilitate real world assets because they're only licensed to most of the time to deal with currencies, right? And as soon as you touch a financial security, right, or a financial product, then you get to talk to Gary Gensler, I guess. I don't know. And that's a thing to watch out, right? So if there's a project promising something that would be a red flag in this space, that's something to look out for, right? But in local jurisdictions, like in Germany, for example, there is a lot of bonds that are being issued on chain. In Switzerland, I know there's a couple of projects that are doing luxury stuff, and Italy as well. Watches, fractional watch ownership, and things like that. So in these isolated cases, it's possible, but then you of course don't have that full potential that you have as you would see with pure crypto assets, right? Where it's I sent you the crypto tokens, the ETH, it's yours, that's it, right? So that's not 100% there yet, right? So just to add that point here.
Interesting. So somebody in the U.S., just for an example, Victor, if I could ask you a question in regards to what you just had to say, is somebody in the U.S. more than likely, because of the regulatory framework that we have in the U.S., we would not be able to legally participate in buying an asset on chain in Germany, right?
I mean, let's assume you could even, right? Let's say you could. So you would not have a channel to buy it, right? Because the ones that would sell it to you as a licensed entity, they might get in trouble because that's still not really. There's no concept for them offering that to you, right? So if you would, how would you buy a real world asset? You would have to go to Coinbase or wherever it's listed, if it's a regulated exchange. Yeah. So of course you could buy it peer to peer, but then how do you know that you really own the asset now, right? Two things have to happen, right? One is ownership records are stored on chain. So if the block has been written, it means you own it, right? And not some other land registry update that has to happen, right? The blockchain is the land registry. The blockchain is the car register, right? Owner's car register or whatever, right? You sent me that token and it's legally accepted at court that I'm the new owner of the car, right? I've sent you Bitcoin, you sent me that car token, it's my car now, right? There's no other second proof to be done. This is it, right? When that happens, and that then becomes an internationally recognized ledger of ownership, crazy times are going to happen, right? We can then do what you just said. That's one thing that has to happen, right? And then there has to be some kind of legal framework where it's defined what means market making those things, selling them, what licenses do we need, right? For example, we have in Switzerland here, we have a DLT law, which allows exactly that, right? But you cannot do anything with it because if I issue now a car token here, I cannot sell it to you, right? I'm not allowed to market this to Swiss investors, to US investors, US buyers, US regulators don't recognize that license, so we're stuck, right? I can send you the token peer to peer, but in your country, this doesn't mean anything that you're not legally an owner, right? There's no certificate that is being recognized, right? As an owner. So that's a little bit kind of the deadlock. So that's why when you want to get into it, it's probably better right now to look into national kind of or some kind of European Union level or US level type of, where you have a kind of common market law or something, right? Projects. Yeah? Even if you want to get into that, that would be also a thing to look after, right? If you want to get into real world asset offering, tokenized things, that's probably also a thing to keep an eye on.
Gotcha. It sounds like there's a ton. There's a lot of different aspects that most aren't aware of whenever it comes to the adoption of bringing assets on chain. And I won't get too much further into this, but like just like a kind of like a side note, and anybody has anything to provide on this is there a difference if you sell the asset or if you loan your asset out to somebody or whatever? Would that kind of trump some of the regulatory issues that we are coming in contact with? Like if you had a house that you wanted to Airbnb, but you don't want to put it on Airbnb because you don't want to pay the fees, you don't want to, do this and that. You just tokenize your house and you put it online and you say, hey, in order to rent this house, you need to, use this particular token. Does that change any of the laws that would be inhibiting us from like purchasing it?
Potentially not. That's one way we were doing it for one project where it was actually concerning US. And these things then fall under traditional regulation of vouchers, gift cards. So that's how the lawyers that are kind of switched on try to circumvent it a little bit. They will label the terms and conditions as if you would be getting a voucher kind of thing, right? So it's not really a real essence value ownership representation, but it's more kind of a consumable thing, right? And yeah, that's one way to do it. That's how we actually ended up doing it in a few cases.
Gotcha. Yes, Stanton.
I think the fun part about being crypto is that we're always sort of in the gray area of the law. So there's a lot of creativity that can be done to kind of circumvent some things. But it is true that the more laws in place, the more kind of stable you can, like on stable grounds, you can build your project. One thing I want to highlight is that the hard part with real world assets is really this actual securitization of it, as in the example of the house, right? Let's say I sell tokens for, I fractionalize my house, I sell it online so I can basically get additional cash for my house, basically take another mortgage off on top of it. And the question for all of the people holding those tokens is, how do you guarantee that I am collateralizing enough asset so that if something goes wrong, there's a trigger for this to basically return somehow return or guarantee that the investors get something out of it. So in most scenarios right now, if I just say this and there's no intermediary who's securitizing this, there's no third party with the law behind them to guarantee that I'm not going to do anything with this house that I'm not supposed to, like it would be really hard to guarantee. So that's one of the issues. It's like when we first did NFTs, the only thing on chain was a URL to a image of the JPEG. And so the JPEG itself wasn't stored on chain, it was just the URL. So if that server went down, game over. Like you don't know what it was pointing to anymore. And in many scenarios, there's also the issue of who's like, if let's say with NFTs, the JPEGs that we were dealing with before, if someone actually used the JPEG that you owned, how do you go and sue them to say like that's copyright? There is no law targeting this specific thing, and there's no global law targeting it either. So these are issues that we're going to bump into over and over again. But this is where again, the big boy pants thing, it's really about linking the crypto technologies to the real world so that there's real world use cases for them.
Oh my gosh. Well, for all those that thought they owned their image, you're wrong. Wow. Yeah, I've heard a little bit about that narrative, and it's interesting, that didn't really make its way around. But I can see how that's a great, kind of comparison or example or even an analogy to just to enlighten you about the RWA space and bringing them on chain. So let's kind of get into like the bread and butter. of the whole reason why we're really wanting to bring real world assets on chain. So whenever it comes to liquidity, how does moving RWAs on chain enhance liquidity, and what kind of effects does this have on different markets? Yes, Mike.
Yeah, I think that I think that's a great point, right? And I think that's essentially the fundamental question, right? I think that when we invest in a project, we're all looking to make money from it somehow, right? And I think when you look at creating liquidity, I think for a project, you picture any project or any business going through that tokenization process. A lot of times when I'm speaking to them, they're looking to essentially tap into a new investor network, right? That could be tapping into a new geography. That could be tapping into a whole new mentality, a whole new narrative, a whole new community, a whole new ecosystem with the whole Web3 world. That could be, like I said, if you've got like some people have mentioned on this panel already, if you've got it's interesting. We're working with the client at the moment based in Brazil who's tokenizing assets in the US. And because they're doing it through crypto, they're able to kind of bypass some of the legislations required for investors in Brazil to be able to invest in that asset class. So, and that creates the liquidity that they were looking for by tapping into a new geography. So I think that's really exciting. So when you think about from the project's perspective, there's a real, there's a real incentive for them to want to get into Web3, for them to want to get into crypto, for them to want to tokenize, because they essentially have this whole new liquidity world that they can tap into. I think where for investors, and I hope to see this with RWAs, where, traditionally speaking, we make money in crypto by buying a token. The token goes from $1 to $5, you sell out, right? You've made a 5x, it's great. We saw a little bit like in the last bull run, there was the whole concept of nodes where people were earning a monthly yield. I'm seeing the similar narrative come out with RWAs, where really what you're buying is in the Web2 world, you're essentially buying a share of a business and you're getting paid dividends or a yield every month, every 3 months, every 6 months, whatever it is. But I think what that's really exciting in the RWAs is because that kind of fixes one of the big problems projects have when it comes to building liquidity, maintaining buying pressure, holding their community. And that's the concept that people will buy a token, and rather than waiting for the pump or waiting, to sell it, they're essentially buying it for the purpose, almost like buying a Coca-Cola share, right? They're buying it because they want the dividend, they want the yield. And I think that's really healthy for a project to maintain their liquidity. So I think from the two ends, that's kind of where RWAs have a big opportunity. I think kind of where the space needs to move, and maybe we'll touch on this in the space today, is the concept of making that user onboarding journey as seamless as possible. Because it's still a little bit confusing. You've got to have a wallet here, you've got to move assets there, you've got to do whatever you've got to do, and that's a little bit complex for people that are not Web3 natives, right? Whereas I think and I'm already seeing projects work on this where an investor could invest in some asset, for example, in Dubai, and they don't even know necessarily that they're investing on blockchain. They pay in fiat, they get their yield in whatever token, but they can withdraw it in fiat. And I think that's really smart because it makes the whole user journey so effective. Not many projects are doing that, but I see some projects trying to do that. And I think that's if once RWAs do that, I think the floodgates open and it becomes a really exciting space. I think in the last space we talked about this I think at the moment there's 100, 200 RWA projects out there, something like that. But in a year there'll be 10,000. So it's a really exciting space.
Yes, the discovery phase is a very, very exciting time to be a part of a space, and most don't really know that's even happening. Most, kind of hear about it, and they don't really take it seriously, and some are building it. And hats off to you guys for being a part of this. So, does anybody else have anything to add about the liquidity and what kind of effects it's going to have on different markets, whether it be Web3 or even the Web 2, way of doing things?
I definitely think that when it comes to the audience that I look at, they are trusting more in RWAs for investments. And when it comes to liquidity, they can see how it's going to affect them when it comes to the future. So they have a lot more trust in using RWAs when it comes to their liquidity.
I couldn't agree more, Sandra. Absolutely, yeah. It's whenever you can see everything transparent, and you can see the entire picture of what's going on. There's no other way than to trust, what's going on. Yes, Stanton, did you have something to add here a second ago?
I was actually going to ask Sam, what kind of clients or people you're working with, what do they normally, what is their understanding of RWA? Because I think for a lot of the people who listen to this podcast, we're kind of in crypto a little bit deeper, where we're comfortable with wallets, etc., which is not a thing that most people are comfortable with. Self custody um, of all the like everything you have to memorize or store somewhere, and everything is at risk in your hands. If you lose it, you lose it forever, kind of thing. That is that is relatively new. Banks typically take care of everything, or the government gives you insurance in some way. For the people you're working with, what are they seeing? Like how are they comfortable?
I say um, you have 12 words or 24 words. That is the key to your kingdom, and that is when you lose everything. Understand, I have been in this space since 2016, off and on, and the people, and I have been scammed, I have been conned, I have been duped. I cannot tell you how many times I have hit nefarious links. I can't tell you how many times. What real world brings in is more, I would say, not just the idea that it's real, the idea that it's tangible, but that there is a future with it and they can understand. It's sort of like DocuSign. You've gone from being able to take a token and move it into a commodity in that kind of sense. A lot of people are looking at it in that way. Does that make sense? Does that help?
Yeah, I think the main thing is just that this is more tangible for them to understand. So if they are interested in Web3 in any way, knowing that the asset is backed by something real makes a lot more sense to them than potentially just monopoly play money.
Yeah, it's more or less like being able uh, to trust the idea that I'm going to put, oh, I don't know, 0.025 ETH towards an Airbnb. Yeah, I mean, I've seen people online buy cars already with different currencies. I don't know if you've heard of Bonsai. People have gone out there and rented houses and stuff like that already. So the problem is being able to authenticate it, and for people to understand, you look at real world as something that can be authenticated, not just uh, a digital way, an online way, not just in a manner of speaking as an asset. And that's something that people don't, that people are starting to see more. It's like you can see more the asset part, not just real world. People are seeing it as that there is value and that there is something to it. And you people forget about the asset part. They look at the real world part a little too much and focus on that.
Right, right. Yeah, and primarily the audience, that Sandra is bringing in, a lot of times it's their kids, the baby boomers, kids or grandkids are telling them about these kind of things, and they're just like they're a little hesitant about it, but it makes up such a large amount of liquidity in our market is baby boomers, people that are retired that aren't really giving this a thought. And I think it's very important that we have a way to onboard those individuals, and I think RWAs is a great way to do that, because who doesn't like a physical asset that they can earn or do whatever with. So whenever it comes to these different markets, and as we're kind of getting close to the end here, and we got maybe a couple more questions. What markets are more prevalent to tokenize on chain currently right now? Stanton, if you want to lead this one off, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, this is tied to my other role in sustainability. One thing that I'm seeing in the industry is that there is significant interest in putting carbon credits on chain. And there's two reasons for this. One is there's a very huge issue in double counting with carbon credits. And just to describe what carbon credits are, it's essentially some entity is producing some kind of service where they're taking carbon from the air, carbon dioxide from the air, because of climate change and all that stuff. And this could be as direct as a machine that's sucking CO2 out of the air, or it can be creating a forest and growing trees. So there's a way to kind of create these credits via a third-party auditor. So somebody will go in and check, are you really creating this many, or are you really taking this much CO2 out of the air? And then you create these paper documents, these credits that other people like Apple would buy to say they are now carbon neutral. So the Apple Watch last year, when they announced it, they said this is a carbon neutral watch. The way they did it was to buy these credits from these other companies who are sucking CO2 out of the air. The issue is once Apple uses these credits, there's no system that says that they've used it. It's just word of mouth. Like everyone's playing the honor system. If they did sell this credit to someone else, no one would know that this happened because no one's keeping track of who used what credit. And so in some ways, crypto is perfect. Blockchain and crypto is perfect for this because one thing that's needed for sustainability in the sustainability realm is that it has to be cost effective. There's not as much money there now compared to other financial systems. There will be in the future, but not yet. So using blockchain for this is perfect because the cost to maintain a 24/7 system, as I think Victor said earlier, is negligible, and everything is fully transparent. You log both the creation of the credit and the use of the credit, and that makes the system actually feasible. So this would be a scenario where it's a perfect use case. This is going to happen. There's already different projects working on this. The key is how do we make this more global and acceptable for everyone to use.
Interesting. Mike, Sandra, or Victor, do you guys have anything to add? What kind of markets are more prevalent to bring on chain?
Yeah,
Yes, Mike.
I think markets that are, kind of what I'm seeing from markets that I'm working in, in terms of helping these projects develop their communities and grow their marketing. I'm seeing a lot of projects, when you think about going through the tokenization, I see a lot of projects coming out of South America, a lot coming out through Africa, obviously a lot coming out through Europe. And then when I look at where, the creating the liquidity, getting the investors, getting the users, a lot at the moment, Southeast Asia is just booming. There's obviously Token 2049 happening at the end of September. There's been a lot of conferences going on over the summer in Southeast Asia. And that seems to be a market where, for many, in some of those territories, something as simple as opening a bank account is quite complicated, right? But getting on chain, getting on the internet, getting access to, some of these RWA projects is much easier. And you're starting to see a real growth, I think, in that space in terms of interest in these type of projects for some, for many of the reasons that we've mentioned already. So I think, yeah, it's an interesting how the RWA is shaping up in terms of, I think, projects looking to do that tokenization process, and then the investors looking to get access to those type of assets, right? So yeah, those are my thoughts on that at the moment.
Love it. Sounds like right now. It kind of sounds like a snowball effect we're starting to see. It's just like anything that works. People start learning and people start innovating, and more resources are available, more ways to use those resources, etc. And eventually, we're not going to need any kind of intermediaries to
Yeah.
do anything.
Yeah, yeah. I think just one little point I just want to double click on this is that I think for RWAs to kind of for us to see a huge adoption, like huge mass adoption, where it does kind of create this greatest wealth shift in human history, right? By bringing so many people on chain, um, I think really the user journey has to become seamless. It has to become like a almost like a protocol where you are interacting with the Web3 tech, but you don't even know you're interacting with the Web3. You don't even know you're on blockchain almost, right? Because even though RWAs have such a positive, and I'm sure everybody on the space agrees, such a positive, strong narrative, it's still, if you're not a Web3 native, even if you are a Web3 native, sometimes it's still a bit confusing. Like, how do you get involved? How do you buy the asset? What does it mean? Et cetera, right? So I think eventually, one thing I love that I'm seeing in the space, and this kind of tests me whether how much of a crypto OG am I, right? I quite like the concept of the KYCs that a lot of projects are doing, right? That kind of process of know who's in the project, know who's behind it. I know crypto, we kind of have this myth of loving to be a bit, behind the scenes, a bit, mysterious, a bit crypto, right? But I think that actually adds a whole layer of trust, which is so great for the industry. But I think in terms of where we start to see this huge, shift in wealth, I think the onboarding process has to become much smoother because right now it's just too, like for us, maybe Web3 natives, we're like, okay, it's fine, it's great. But for someone who doesn't understand what Web3 is, understanding how to go from one chain to, what is a chain, so already it starts to get complicated. And so, yeah, I think that needs to be the big step. The next big step is how do we simplify it? How do we dumb it down? How do we allow someone to, open up their screen on their phone or their laptop at home and just with a simple few clicks, boom, they've invested and they're on chain, right? So yeah, when that happens, I think then it's the party gates will open.
Nice, awesome. Sandra, yes, please.
Yeah, I also think that it's because it's real world asset, it's more acceptable. People are seeing it. People, a lot of these are accepting fiat, in the sense of other people say dollars or other people say their currency, and people understand that verbiage, they understand that vocabulary, and I think changing the vocabulary is helping too, because people are talking about using agriculture, using commodities, using metals, gold. Just the verbiage is bringing people, I think, is helping. I mean, it just common to me, it's just common sense that we're actually meeting people where they are, because for so long I did the same thing. I mean, I would talk about things in a very intellectual manner, and the vocabulary that I used, people didn't understand. And being able to talk about a real world asset and being able to say, hey, this is actually how you're able to invest, step one, two, three, and people understand that and hit click, is amazing that we've gotten that far and people understand that.
That's a very important point, because there's so many people that don't really understand what Web3, what that even means. So you know, adopting and properly communicating what all this, what resources are out there for them to use, how to use it, and not making it so, making it a little bit more native for them to understand. So I think that's it for today, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Today we had some awesome speakers talk about RWAs, the greatest wealth shift in human history, and it's happening before our eyes. So definitely go back, take a listen to the first part if you haven't listened to it. and our giveaway is over. It just ended, I believe. So we have 2 winners that will automatically be chosen if you completed the quest. And in order, you had to complete and follow all the hosts and retweet the space, of course. So thanks so much, everybody, for coming. Stanton, Victor, Sandra, and Mike, thank you so much, guys. Really looking forward to the next time. And till next time, everybody, thank you so much. Talk to you later.